welcome to the town hall. I believe I saw Mike Lawson join us. This is brought to you by, hey Mike, CUSN Big and CU Broadcast. There was Mike. Mike and I are your hosts. This still says Friday, March 20th, but it is today, so we'll talk about that on Wednesday here, but we're kind of just going through the same thing over and over again in terms of what we know. So the format here is we tried to limit this to 20 Crayons. We have some repeat Crayons. We're happy to have them back. You're more than welcome to attend as many times as you want. You're also more than welcome to have other people attend. After I go through just a quick, short briefing here, we will start introducing the Crayons one by one. Now, Melissa, who is in the chat, she will be sort of checking in with you. We've tried to do this in alphabetical order every time, and we've never succeeded. So I am going to ask a friend of mine to kick it off because I know he will have incredible things to say, which is Kevin Wright. So Kevin, be prepared to go first. And then Melissa, if you want to go second or third, start reaching out to Melissa on the chat. We'll talk about the chat in a minute. If you feel compelled to dig deeper with any other individual Crayon, we encourage you to reach out via Zoom's private chat and exchange contact information for further collaboration. If you've got information you think everybody should know, post that in the everyone chat. If there's something that comes up that is worthy of a longer discussion, we will facilitate moving that to Mike Lawson's CU broadcast show. And Mike, I think you've already got a couple scheduled, right?
I do.
Yep.
Excited.
And then these town halls will be recorded and published on CU Broadcast, as well as on the big website. And we're actually doing an audio version on the podcast that Glenn Sarvati is working on now. Ryan, how is that going?
That's going good. We should have that, the first one up by the end of the week.
Great. So with that in mind, just a little bit of learning. This is how you do the chat. For those of you who haven't played with Zoom before, we're finding a lot of people, this is their first time in Zoom. So if you see on the bottom, it says first click here, that little bar there that has the mute, start video, invite, manage participants, share, chat, record, that little video right there is, or that little bar, it won't be there unless you hover over it with your cursor or your mouse. And then it'll pop up when you click the chat on the right, as you can see, that will pop out. And then on the bottom is how you can pick the people who are talking, which it will tell you by the, you can see on the screen. So if you want to send something to everyone, go ahead. If you want to send something to a particular person, go ahead. What I'd like to do right now, because we use this as a transcript, is ask everybody to go ahead and sign in via the chat. So just put your name and which Crayon you're with and whether you're willing to talk or you're here just to listen. And Melissa will start working through that. And Kevin, like I said, you volunteered to be first. So moving forward here, here's some things that we came up with. I'm not going to go through all of these. Well, I'll touch on them briefly. The Crayon should be tracking direct deposit interruptions. Almost every Crayon we talked to had done something around their PTO policies. We had a lot of Crayons reporting large withdrawals, and so I'd like to hear more if that's still happening. Crayons allowing members to break CDs with no penalties. Some considering relaxing Reg D to allow more electronic transactions. Relief loans, and it seems like every time someone mentions a relief loan, someone else says, "Hey, could I get the requirements for that?" So if you're offering a relief loan and you're willing to share your profile for that, sounds like a lot of Crayons are interested. Most Crayons have closed their lobbies. And many are working on separating employees, cross-training, including call centers, and moving those folks there. By the way, if you're not muted, if you don't mind muting, you can unmute when you can talk. That would be great. Many Crayons are looking at skip-a-pay programs and loan deferment programs while waiving fees for both. The night drop box, that was a really cool idea we heard, was people using the night drop box for deposits and checking them hourly. One of the Crayons mentioned that. Crayons are advising members to wipe down the ATMs before use. So if you're using the ATM, if you can wipe it down before you use it. There's a need to advise co-op of your lobby hours and what you're doing, because apparently shared branching that folks are showing up and being turned away, or maybe are not aware of the hours. So no potlucks, which was in the credit union, that's an important thing. I remember my favorite thing about Suncoast was the potlucks, as you can tell. Most credit unions are working on remote workers, and they're struggling to find some of the resources to go with that, laptops and VPN tokens, but there were some good answers around that using other technology to allow people to use their own home PCs, things like that. Just moving forward here. Common challenges, remote usage for exclusive platforms like Fedline, branches without drive-through lanes. So a lot of credit unions don't have drive-through lanes, and so it's difficult for them to close the lobbies. Policies for obviously ill members trying to come into the branch. What do you do for that? Policies for sick employees. Digital services are being overwhelmed. Apparently, we had our peaks and valleys, but now our peaks are much higher because people can't go into the branch and they're being forced to learn the digital services. The call center for remote workers, I mentioned that. Security concerns, both physical and cyber. People showing up to the branch with masks and gloves do scare the tellers if you let them in. And then there's also a big cyber concern around the remote workers. We're finding that the hacker community out there also is quarantined and at home with nothing to do, and they've decided to check all the PCs and things and finding out where the remote workers are. The lack of supplies, I think that's pretty obvious. And then concerns around regulations. Are you holding your annual meeting? What do you do if you can't meet that quorum? How do you deal with that? And board meetings. So those are the kinds of things that we heard from the various credit unions. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to go ahead and get get started here and let Kevin Wright go ahead and talk. For those of you that are ready to talk, just I'll be keeping an eye on the chat with Melissa. She'll be letting me know who's next after Kevin, and we'll get everybody kind of through it. So if you haven't checked in with her, please do. And Kevin, if you don't mind muting and telling us what's going down at Edition in Orlando.
Sure.
Lake Mary.
So at this point, we have about 220 employees working remotely. We got our last batch of laptops out today. Laptop acquisition was not a problem. That went relatively smooth. Headsets were the biggest problem. The first step that we attempted was trying to get the HIC cables that rather than plugging into the Mitel phones, they could plug into the USB. And that was a fail, so we moved on to USB headsets. I was able to acquire 125 of them, and I've literally expended every resource to try and find more, and I could not find any additional. We closed down all of our branch lobbies. It is drive-through only. We are doing lobby via appointment only. We use Coconut software, so our members can schedule an appointment online. We have very limited services for what they can actually schedule an appointment for. Basically, it's if they have a safe deposit box and they need to get into it, if they need to sign a form that we don't have via DocuSign, which is pretty limited at this point, or if they need to come in and get a replacement debit card because we have instant issue. However, we're monitoring that traffic, and if it becomes too high, we're going to shut down the instant issue and force them to have us deliver through the mail their debit card. Because we just went through a mass reissue because of our name change, we have a large number of members who all have fresh cards. As a result of that, we also went to contactless cards across the board. So, of course, we are shamelessly plugging the use of contactless cards so that they don't have to touch anything wherever possible. We have a disaster loan in place up to $7,500 at 1.5% interest over 3 years. All you have to do is state that you have some sort of emergency where those funds would come into play. However, we are counseling all of our members that the loan isn't necessarily the way to solve your problems, especially if you or somebody else in your family has recently lost their job or has reduced hours, because they have to be able to show a way to repay that loan. So we are offering Skip-a-Pay, which we always offered usually during the holidays and sometimes during the summer because of our teacher base. We allow up to 2 per year. We've increased that to allow 2 per year, even if you hadn't done it before. So we've also waived the skip a pay fee as of today, because we did get some early feedback of people who were angry on Twitter that we were charging $15 for skip a pay. So we waived it and we refunded all those who actually paid the fee. In addition, on April 1st, we are advancing all of the consumer loans that aren't tied to real estate forward by one payment. So members can choose to go ahead and make their payment anyway, and there'll just be an extra payment ahead. Those who can't make that payment, they get a reprieve on that 1 month. We looked at doing it on the real estate side. It's far more difficult at this time, but we're still evaluating whether or not we can do it. My development team is coding furiously to hit that April 1st date for us. We all of the MSRs in our branches are doing remote call center agents from their offices. So we increased our contact center by about 140 agents. We were using Jack Henry, their contact center functionality, and our internal contact center that has about 40 agents was primarily doing lending, inbound and outbound. As a result of the coronavirus, we're now taking all calls, and Jack Henry is being used as the overflow. Two reasons for that. Number one, Jack Henry actually was experiencing far more problems with staffing than we were early on when this first hit. So our abandon rate was going much higher on the Jack Henry side. They started to stabilize some, but we want to keep all of our people working as long as possible. So we just decided to recruit all of the branch MSRs. The people who have all been sent home are really primarily back office employees, branch staff if they need to because of child care issues, single parent, no other choice because most of the child care facilities have shut down. And then in some of our counties, like Orange County, they've issued a stay at home, so all of the child care there is completely closed. We started a donation pool for employees to donate sick hours for those who have low or minimal hours available and they need to go out, whether they get sick or just have to have care. That would cover them up until they're out 30 days, and then at that point we'll start looking at the disability options that we have in place.
Wow, so many things. Can I ask just a couple questions? How many employees in total do you have?
587.
Wow, so more than half or close to half the workforce, or at least a third of it, is working at home. That's really incredible. Did I hear you right that you're advancing all members' loans, all the revolving loans? So it's at my auto and my credit card is basically what you said. Nobody has to pay for March, or is it nobody has to pay for April?
No, okay, so nobody has to pay for April. It's auto, PLOC, signature, boat, RV, all of those. Credit cards we were going to do, but the problem is, based on the billing cycles that we have, most of those have already gone out. And so because those have gone out, people are already paying on those on their credit cards. So we're handling those as a one-off. If a member calls in, we'll go ahead and waive it. We were talking about waiving those for May. The issue with that is we use PSU for credit cards. And so to hit all of our cycles, essentially, if we want to even skip May and have it show up on their statement with a zero due, we're going to have to let them know by the 8th. It takes 3 days to process that PCF. So realistically, we'll make a decision by April 3rd whether we want to waive the credit card payments for the month of May. And then we're also going to reevaluate the other consumer loans do we waive for May. In addition to that, we have the skip-a-pay. So if you've never used skip-a-pay before, you can skip 2 payments there. So now you're up to 3 payments potentially. And then if you're in really dire circumstances, we have a deferment option, so you can defer up to 2 more payments. However, once you take the defer option, there's nothing else we can do. We can't skip anything else. So we're really encouraging our members to use the skip-a-pay first if that's an option.
This is a silly technical detail, but if I skipped the pay already and you guys then decided to to do what you've just done, then you add that on to the end, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so we're skipping it another month on top of that. So we've
Oh.
got a very extensive FAQ that will be posted to our members on the last day of March so that they can understand how it's going to work.
It's awesome. One thing I liked what you said was your social media feedback. I know you guys pretty well, and I know you have people that just focus on that. You said that you would change some behavior based on the social media feedback, for instance, the fees. Maybe elaborate on that just a bit. That's not something we've talked a lot about, is what the members are saying out in the social media space and how we're able to adjust to that. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so we have a team that's dedicated to that. Once we changed names, especially, we really needed to focus on that. A lot of people thought that we were bought by a bank or were bought by a company in China, and so immediately we had started really ramping up that social media team. So we're pretty sensitive to things that get posted. We make sure that we post responses all the time. We leave everything out there, and we're constantly trying to improve our scores. So when we had feedback that while we thought it was great that we came out and added the additional skip-a-pays, we had a few members who gave us feedback that we were trying to profit off of people's bad times, even though we thought $15 was a pretty reasonable fee. We just decided that it's definitely not worth any kind of negative press. That wasn't the intention, so we go ahead and waive those fees and then reimburse everybody who already paid it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we'll hear more about that. But it's really interesting. And I know, if I remember right, for your organization, as many Florida organizations are from my own time working there at GT and Suncoast, a good size of a good portion of your membership is elderly. And so it sounds like you guys are trying to take that into account as well.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we possibly can. The biggest thing that we're focused on right now is how do we keep everybody working? Because we don't want to do any kind of layoff or reduction in hours that would result in them getting a reduction in salary. So the first thing we did is we cut all marketing expenses. So everything that we had planned, we canceled. Because we're essentially looking at anything we do at this point as a marketing cost. We started identifying all of those lingering projects and like things like data cleanup or fixing errant driver's licenses in the database, fixing anything that came up in reports that needed to be cleaned up. So like email addresses that were malformed, things that we could have most any type of staff member work on so that as things slow down, they'd still be able to work. Our community engagement group, whose their sole purpose is to go out and meet with businesses and try and get them to sign up or attend events. There's no events going on, so we took them and we're having them revamp some of our online banking videos. We make 30 to 90-second videos showing people how to perform different actions inside of online banking. So we have that team just focused on the wish list of items that we had for that to help make it an easier transition for all members to be able to do anything digitally. So they're doing those things, and again, we're trying to come up with lists constantly of things that we can have staff do to keep them working.
You sound like my wife. When she found out I wasn't traveling for a few weeks or however long this is going to be, she's like, oh, and she started breaking out plans and ordering stuff for me to do. So, but I think that's the right approach. So thank you so much, Kevin. For those of you who might want to ask more questions of Kevin, Kevin, if you don't mind monitoring the chat for a few minutes, you can either go privately to him, or if you think it's something everybody would like to know, ask in the everyone area, and I'm sure Kevin will answer. Kevin, that's great information. Are there any questions you're looking to get answered before you go?
No, I mean, I think our biggest concern is, obviously watching to see how long this goes and how we, income is going to become an issue longer term, and especially trying to keep everybody working and employed. So we're definitely aggressively watching that. And then, I mean, our expense, just getting the headsets the added software licenses to add everybody to the contact center, and the additional laptops that we needed. I mean, we spent $300,000 just doing that over the last 2 weeks.
Wow. Which was not budgeted for.
Totally unbudgeted.
Got it. All right, Kevin, thank you so much for being the first one in the guinea pig. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Next, we're going to have Chris from Payveris.
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm just trying
All
to
right.
find your slide.
I need to send you my logo too, I think.
Do we have a bad logo?
You had last week looked like it was a screen grab from our website. It's good enough for today though, that's fine.
Great. Yeah. Send that to Melissa. She'll take care of it.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, I'll keep it brief because I know as a QSO, I have not any similar anecdotal words to add to the conversation, but I'll just give the folks on the call a little background on us and why we're here, why we care. Okay, so Payveris CU is a QSO. We basically leverage Payveris's Move Money platform, that removes friction in money management as a fintech. As a QSO, our focus is deep on better serving Americans with fintech tools, to support and reinforce financial health and wellness. And so we're committed to serving credit unions and combining, the technology, to serve the members. And we're tuning in here today like we have last time, just because we want to hear what's happening out there. We want to understand what's going on across the country, understand where members' needs are, and then, find a way to partner and help however we can with the technology side. So we think this town hall is fantastic, and it's great to hear y'all coming together and hearing the awesome things that you're doing to solve needs. It makes me proud to be working with credit unions, particularly.
All right. Well, thank you. I believe if you're interested, obviously reach out to Chris on the text. So let me just see who's next here. I believe we have Shane from Beehive.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you, Shane.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you for joining and welcome.
You're welcome. This is the first one I've joined, and it's been very beneficial so far. So I appreciate your time spent in preparing this. I really don't have anything new to add. We have similar issues to the previous speaker, and so the only thing that's unique to us right now is that we serve members of the LDS Church, and we have missionaries coming home from all over the world.
Oh, no.
And when they come home, they're quarantined automatically for 14 days, and their parents, many of whom work for us, are also quarantined. So we're having an issue with staying at home and laptops, buying more laptops, spending money that wasn't budgeted, obtaining licenses to TeamViewer and other programs that are necessary. So, it's just, we just fight the fight one day at a time, but we're doing quite well, and our employees are adapting, and we're assigning other duties as we can, especially in the contact center where they're needed while our lobbies are closed. So overall, we're doing quite well, taking it a day at a time. I'm actually home right now working. Got a little bit ill over the weekend, and none of my employees wanted me to come to work. So I'm sitting here, but going back tomorrow. So that's really all I have.
Well, great. Well, we're glad you're getting something out of this, and we thank you for sharing about your missionaries. Every credit union uniquely has circumstances like that because of the nature of who we are, particularly if you're still in that federal space. And, those people have unique issues. And it sounds like you're meeting those, and it would be horrible to come home. I had a friend who was not a missionary, but her son just got home. She was studying abroad and was in the Czech Republic, and trying to get a college kid to self-quarantine for 14 days after being in the Czech Republic for 4 months or whatever is hard. So I can see how that would go. So thank you again for joining, and feel free to reach out to folks and ask your questions. I'm sure there's plenty. And you're in Rexburg,
Idaho, southeast
Idaho, yeah. So you don't have a lot of cases and things like that. So just real quickly while I got you, what is the sense there? Is that a place where, as we listen to President Trump talk about reopening the economy, I think he's thinking of places like yours where there isn't a large, a large outbreak or, those sorts of things, that maybe those areas can be reopened. And I don't know what that really means.
Yeah, we only have 3 cases in a city. We have about 30,000 people in the community, so the number of cases is quite small. Idaho, I'll be honest with you, is usually behind everyone else in the country. We're a little bit remote. Utah has quite a few cases, and it's spreading this way through international students that come here, or like I mentioned earlier, missionaries that are returning home mandatorily from their missions due to the coronavirus issue. So I expect we'll see some more in our community, but I'm hoping this will level off and we can all get back to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we thank you for taking the time and doing this, and we're glad you're getting something out of it. And we wish you and your members, that they're safe and that you continue to serve them and these ideas help them. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So there was a question from Dave K. Has anyone talked about how extra skip-a-pay impacts GAP? So that's a good question. I think that maybe, I know I have a couple people here, specifically Kirk Kordoleski and Kevin Sarber, who might be able to help with that question. But I also think that some of the other folks who are doing this, particularly Kevin, might be able to take that back. So great question. I don't know. And I hadn't even thought about it, but gap insurance is certainly something that we sell a lot on our autos and that we're allowing them to skip on. So I believe the next person is Paul from First Financial. So I'll just skip over and see if I can get the right one here. First Financial out of Albuquerque. Paul, you there? Paul might be having trouble finding the mute, so I'll give him just a second more. If not, we'll go to Dave from UniWyo or University of Wyoming next. All right, we're going to move on to Dave. And Paul, we will come back to you if you want to post in the everyone or talk to them. Oh, are you there? All right, we're going to go to Dave. Welcome, Dave.
John, thanks. I don't have anything to add. I would say the only thing that I would add is that we really only are in one location. We're in Laramie, Wyoming, University of Wyoming, and we really only have one big site in town. So we've had to shift our people, like doing shift work in the event that somebody actually comes down with a positive test, and we're gonna, basically cut that team out. And then at least we could still run limited hours. Our drive-through is super tiny, and we're trying to run all of our members through drive-through because our lobby is closed. And so that was the only thing. I mean, we came up with that last week. It's not earth-shattering or anything like that, but I think it's helped us give some comfort knowing that, like, okay, if somebody does come down positive, their team gets extracted, and then we still have this other team that's available. And I don't know how long that'll last, but similar to an earlier comment, we only have one confirmed case in town, and the university is out, so it's kind of limited our exposure somewhat.
Yeah, I do think you may have a little more to contribute. Can I ask a few questions?
Sure.
So one of the things we have with other credits here was for those that serve universities, I assume you serve staff and students?
We do.
So with staffs being sent home, a lot of them are trying remote classes. Are you finding that they're out of work, the professors and the teachers and the like?
They're pretty remote. So our spring break was last week, and then they extended spring break to this week so that all the folks at the university could start to prepare their online. So they're all doing preparation this week, and they're going to start online classes next week. So the university already had a platform to enable them to do that, thankfully, because they already were doing that in some channels. And so I just think they beefed up some licenses and they're working on that product. But I think what's interesting is they're trying not to do live sessions. So they don't want professors doing live. They want them to record their sessions, have bulletin boards where people are interacting so that they have more flexibility around students dialing in. think their biggest issue is some students just didn't really have an option. Maybe they left a day or two before spring break, week before last, and so they had to open the dorms this week to get some students out, let them have access to their things and all that. But I'd say the majority of the students are gone, and a majority of the staff at the university is working remote.
Yeah, I've been to your university a few times. Actually, my son's been there too. Used to do a wrestling camp there. I'm in Colorado Springs. I know that a lot of the students also are from out of state. So when you say they went home, they likely went back to wherever they're from.
Yeah, and Wyoming's pretty regional. So Colorado, South Dakota, Nebraska, and then around the state, we have I mean, it's a big university for local folks in Wyoming. And so a lot of folks just went back home.
Yeah, yeah. And does that worry you about services for the students at all, or have you had to ramp up electronic services for those that are remote, or are you doing something to sort of extend that out to the students themselves?
We're pretty strong, I think, for our size. We're a Scimitar client. We use Ease, so we're outsourced. We use Banno for our mobile app, and we use NetTeller for online. So everything's been working great. Our IT guys have been. We don't have developers on site. We're using a lot of outsourced technology, and so all of it's worked really well. Similar to the discussion earlier, we only had to buy like 20 headsets. We didn't have to buy 120. So that was a lot easier for us to procure, but
Sure.
we're trying to push our contact center folks out. We just have such a, 80% of our assets are in Laramie. We just opened a branch in Cheyenne 3 weeks ago. Great timing.
Yeah.
So, we're just trying to service all these folks that are local, because we have about a 28% market share here in Laramie. And so just trying to be accessible for all those folks and make sure that our one site doesn't have to close.
All right, one last question, just because I try to give everybody 5 minutes, and it feels like, and I don't know when this stimulus money is going to hit, but it feels like that's an opportunity for credit unions, and in particular, I would think students who get this and whatnot, trying to keep them from not, that's the wrong way to go, trying to help them be financially astute with that money. Is that anything that has been discussed at all?
Not yet. I mean, everybody's just kind of scrambling over there. We are the official sponsor of financial wellness at the university, so we partner a lot with them on education and things like that. The thing that's interesting about Wyoming is that there's a large state endowment, and so a lot of kids that are from the state of Wyoming actually get a lot of tuition assistance if they have good grades and they take certain classes. And so a lot of those kids are on some sort of supplement, and it's already a very affordable school. And so I think they'll probably be the least impacted out of anybody going to university just because of the state support and things like that. But we've had a few conversations about trying to educate kids and what to do with any stimulus money that they get. But again, they're just scrambling over there to try to just get things running and keeping the doors and the lights on for folks going remote.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, and we appreciate. You may not think you have a lot to offer, but you do, and so we appreciate your time, and hopefully you'll get some more out of this as well. Thanks again.
So much. I really appreciate it.
Michelle from Westera, you have a question that you wanted to ask. So
I'm just curious with the other credit unions and their drive up traffic that they're seeing. We have 8 of our branches that are open, 8 out of 10 that have drive ups, and we've noticed the traffic is really increasing. We've had fender benders, people honking, yelling, getting really upset, calling in, saying they've had to wait for an hour. So we have staff now. We have 2 employees out directing traffic to try to get individuals that are entering the drive-up line to take deposits only, giving them like an offline receipt, or having them, pull into the parking lot if they need a reissue of a card. Just wondering how everyone else is dealing with this. It's becoming quite an issue. And then the stimulus checks won't probably arrive until May, but we'll see another uptick in our drive up. traffic. So it's becoming an issue here at Westera. So curious what others are doing.
Well, just, yeah, let's, if you can put that into the everyone, or if you want to speak, put it into everyone and let me know. To me, and Kevin Sarber and I always talked about this, we feel like this is a Chick-fil-A moment, right? I don't know if you've seen what Chick-fil-A does with a drive-through here in Colorado. I'm sure it happens elsewhere, but they're
Yep,
masterful.
that's what we're calling it here, the Chick-fil-A model. So we're trying to get them before they, enter the line so we can get them out before they're stuck for an hour. So yeah,
Yeah.
doing the same thing.
Do you have technology for that? Like the Chick-fil-A people they're wandering around with, they're like the Hertz rental people. They're coming through. So, but
We don't have the technology yet.
so it feels like that's something that if someone has anything out there for Scimitar in particular, and I think Elizabeth's on this call. She used to work in that space. She may know something, but yeah, if anybody else, it looks like Kevin put some notes in there, how much, they've been doing on the drive-through. Kevin, is that more or less, or what does that look like? I would assume more, but what percentage?
That's at least a 60% increase over what we would normally have. And then from the contact center standpoint, we're taking almost double the amount of calls right now over what we normally take. But we also have 4 times the staff taking those calls, so it's been pretty easy.
So, the one thing too I was going to mention is the night drops. Some people have been encouraging the night drops and just take and put them in there, and they've been, even if they're used for commercial use or whatever. And so, they could use that, and they check them more frequently, like every hour or something, and process them. Maybe that would help, Michelle.
Yeah, we're doing that as well. Thank you. Yeah, it's just, it's interesting that people really will wait 45 minutes to do a simple cash withdrawal or a deposit.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too, is maybe while you're going through the line, show them remote deposit capture or do it for them. That could be a thing. Elizabeth says that building a Scimitar tablet front end wouldn't be hard. So if someone's interested in that, we do have those kinds of resources. But I don't know how long we'll need it for. I don't want to push that into a sales piece, but we certainly are very interested. So Jason from Arapahoe. And make sure we get to Jason.
How's it going?
Hey, Jason.
So I attended last week and kind of giving you our whole process of the way things are going. One thing that kind of has been kind of beneficial that we started doing when you talk in regards to like the co-op share branching network and all that, and kind of keeping them in communications. Our staff has been, we only have 2 locations, and our teller staff has actually been calling out to the nearest locations to each branch that are share branching, and making sure that we are up to date on what their processes as far as taking, share branching members, or if their lobbies are open and how that's processing. And we actually have created a resource that we are updating daily. And because we only have 1 branch that has a drive up, we have been posting these resources by our ATMs for members to grab and go and kind of help them find places to access other places, and when they can't get to us at that moment. So that has been pretty helpful. So I thought I'd share that tip.
Yeah. And was it you that had the question here about the call center representatives being trained?
I did, yeah. I was actually going to get into that next. So we are struggling currently right now. We have 2 people that are in training. At the time of training, they were barely starting. At the time before this even started, they were barely starting to do more hands-on, where they're actually taking calls, but their trainer is like on the phone with them, ready to help them if they get stuck and those types of things. So since this has happened, we've had to switch the role, and we've been utilizing Microsoft Teams for them to connect with their trainer, so they can actually speak back and forth and see what screens their trainer is actually clicking on. And so when a call actually comes into our call center, what happens is the trainer actually lets the member know that they're training with somebody and that they're going to place them on a brief hold, and then they actually call the trainee on a three-way call, get them on there so they can actually hear and see the screens that are being accessed and what they're actually doing throughout that process. It's been fine and working good up until now, but now we're at a point where we're like, I'm feeling bad for these two people that are just sitting there watching over and over. I want them to actually being able to take calls and do some hands-on type training. But the fear is how, when they get stuck on an item, how do we help them without, making it really inconvenient for our members, because we don't have that trainer sitting right next to them telling them where to click, or and I'm just curious if any other institute having that same issue.
I have an idea.
Sure.
And I don't want to get into too much detail. You and I could talk offline, but I'd have to know a little bit more about what you're doing, but Zoom might facilitate that. One of the things you can do with Zoom is you can give remote control to another person on the Zoom. So, and I'm wondering, I'd have to know a little bit more about your call center software, but I think you could use it. Maybe you and I could connect separately. Maybe Melissa can schedule us something, unless other people are interested. But my thought would be that you sort of schedule this really long Zoom session where you're connected, they're sharing their screen, and because they're sharing their audio, you should be able to hear it if it's a soft phone. And then if they need assistance, they could easily ask for it and pull it in. The person who's listening in on the Zoom could easily take control of the screen and help.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'd say that's if we can set something aside and kind of go over that.
Test it. You could test it. But it's knowing Zoom a little bit. We've been using it for so many years. We kind of got it figured out, but might work. I don't know. Just a thought. And I'm sure maybe Kevin talked about the software they have does this. I'm assuming yours doesn't allow sort of, because it's probably a put together soft phone or something new that you guys are trying to establish in the midst of all this.
Well, we do have the ability to, like our manager, or the manager that we have running that particular department has the ability to talk through the management app to where you can actually whisper on a call or hear in and those types of things. So that might be the way we would go with him, because at least he'd be able to help out in that area. But for the other person that does not have that ability, then we're kind of limited on how they can do that. So Zoom might be a good idea.
Yeah, happy to help. Okay. So those are the list of people that wanted to talk. That said, some of you may have not gotten through on the chat, or you might be struggling. Is there, before I usually like to get some feedback from Mike, from Doug, our sponsor, and also from Kevin Sarber. And I particularly want to hear from Kirk Korleski, who's in Long Island, given that New York is the centerpiece here. But I want to make sure Ukrainians get to talk, and if they have questions, I want to get them out there. So any other Ukrainian that would like to speak, just go ahead and unmute, and if we get a few people that are talking at once, I'll sort it out. I heard somebody here clicking.
So John, this is Kevin. The only other thing I want to mention is, since this started, our credit union has been coming under periodic attacks online.
Yep.
So I don't know if anybody else is seeing it. We're seeing it mostly out of Vietnam, and then various different places in Asia, but particularly out of Vietnam. We ended up just cutting off most all of the foreign IPs, but I didn't know if anybody else.
What about all your members in Ho Chi Minh?
We forced them to use one of the VPN clients, and I even reimbursed them for it.
No, I think that's smart. I can tell you, I don't know if anybody else, and you're welcome to say, put that into everyone, but we're hearing that from others. As a matter of fact, one of the things we're offering, and we're actually offering this free to the IC, we're sending this out today. IC is our innovation club, of which Kevin is one of our star members. Remote, so one of the capabilities we have, and we have a lot of folks that are kind of right now sort of on the bench while we wait for some of our projects come together, is we have a lot of folks that work from home and also have a security background. So one of the things we've been helping with is doing remote worker security verification. We're actually working with OGO and CU 2.0 on that with Kirk Drake. to just check out those VPN lines. One of the great concerns I have, Kevin, and I know you well enough to know you would have the same concern, is that folks that are using VDI or some of these non-laptop products, and even if you do have the laptop product, if there is a computer or a phone that is on that network that's been hacked, there's a vulnerability potentially there. So that's something that we are trying to help with, and also concern around bandwidth. To your point, Kevin, not only are we seeing the attacks, but we're also seeing such a rise in the digital usage that some people haven't prepared for that amount of bandwidth at their peaks. But you'll get some more details on that today, Kevin, from us. And then I would agree, people need to keep an eye on that and maybe share. So maybe, Kevin, maybe you want to put that IP in, if you have it, the IPs you got attacked from in everyone, and other people can check if they've got the capability.
Oh, the list would be, it would be far too large.
Are they coming from a bunch? Okay.
Yeah, and then normally what happens is as we get done playing whack-a-mole, they start coming from Amazon. In this case, they haven't, but thus far we've quieted it down. But for about 3 to 4 days, and in the past they've always gone after online banking, but right now they're not. They're primarily targeting our corporate website. So we had to beef that up a little.
Interesting. If you're experiencing that too, you might want to pop that in the everyone and reach out. So that said, if anyone else wants to talk real quick, just pop up. If not, I'm going to turn it over to Kirk Kordoleski, mainly because I'm worried about him. He is in the epicenter of this thing, and I wanted to kind of also hear his thoughts on what he's heard and what's going on. So any other Koreans you want to speak? All right, Kirk.
Hey, John. Well, thank you. And
I
we're
don't like
doing
you
fine.
starting off with a cough, but we'll let that go.
Yeah, it's you know, anytime you have a cough for allergies or anything else, you know, it's a nervous situation around here. As you've probably seen in some of our numbers, we're doubling in the number of cases every 3 days. We're over 30,000 illnesses now, which, you know, by itself would be above everything but the top 4 countries in the world. And so we're running out of, we're facing a deficit of medical supplies, ventilators, and soon to be hospital beds. It gives you some sense of the contagious, how contagious the disease is. And there's been some talk recently, because of that level of being contagious, is having anybody that travels from New York to go into quarantine for 14 days. But it, you know, and given hindsight's always clear, I would assume with 12 million people in New York, so much of the disease has been moved around the country in many ways. And if you look at the Johns Hopkins numbers down the East Coast, you can just kind of see it spreading. So,
what are you seeing Koreans do in that area? Do you know,
yeah.
like, obviously you're acutely aware of your
Right.
former alma mater, Bethpage.
Yep.
And
you know, so they're aggressively closing branches. What you've seen, there was an article in Credit Union Times today that 48 of the top 50 credit unions have closed branches. They're typically not closing them all. They're trying to keep them open for some of the reasons that have been talked about on the phone call. The overwhelming business that happens at the drive-ups or otherwise, because people still need transactions. A pretty aggressive stance also that has come up on the calls over the last few days about increasing the number of debit transactions and the debit limits, and a thought process that's going into how to do lending in a more digital format if they're not already there, because refinance mortgages particularly are still being aggressively pursued by members, and you know, it's how to do that. And then all the other loan forbearance products that we've talked about on the calls as well. So all that's happening, but the challenge becomes, and John, you've talked about this in the last phone call, you might have mentioned it today, is what happens if somebody in the call center gets ill? and how do you separate people far enough, particularly when you're talking about very large credit unions. They're already running 2 shifts at this point. And, so all of those pieces are at play. They're trying to expand call center hours. They're moving people in from branches to the call center, just as we've talked about on the phone. So pretty much what everyone else is doing on steroids.
So I would think, and I would think they're not here because they're doing everything they can. We did hear from Hudson Valley and Poughkeepsie, which was great. But I would think at this point, there's no way at least one or a few of those big crayons has not experienced some staff that are at least infected.
It has to be, they're, and if it isn't, if they aren't infected directly, their child or their spouse are. And as you see in any of the countries that have been affected, in New York being, their spouses may well be a health professional. So the exposure is hard to contain at this point. So they're struggling with those things and yet trying to serve the members. Our old shop call center is actually in Maryland. And so they have been able to serve out of there, but Jovia and Suffolk and Hudson Valley, those guys are all here.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. And, stay home, Kirk. You, not to be flip about it, but you are unfortunately right in the range. And so.
Yeah, right. I unfortunately meet the criteria.
Yeah. So we need you to be healthy. And so hopefully I know you're taking all the precautions necessary. So
yeah. Thank you, John.
So Tim Tibbles, well, first, Doug and Mike, you guys, I want to use the last little bit of this. We've been collecting data about this. I was going to let Tim show a little of it, but before we get there, I wanted to make sure you guys didn't have anything to throw out.
John, this is Doug. The only thing I would say is kind of some commentary regarding Arapahoe and reaching out to other credit unions and so forth. With the share branching right now, there's a very fine line, because what we're finding is so many credit unions are closing their lobbies, going to drive up only. And some of those are the largest credit unions. And so those members are just like with West Terra, the members are like, wow, these are long lines, I'm going somewhere else. So they're overwhelming smaller to mid-sized credit unions. And so now those credit unions are saying, I can't continue to service. So we're having a kind of a domino effect. So I just caution people to looking to sending your members somewhere else. They might be open, but the cure could be worse than your own problem. So just be cautious because we're, like I said, we're seeing a domino. And so other credit unions are actually now saying, hey, we can't do it anymore, we're closing up. So I don't know totally what the answer is, but they're kind of the other side of the coin, John.
Hey, Doug, that sounds like a conversation that needs to be had with Mike in general as a bigger conversation, because if we're experiencing it in the ecosystem we have, it has to be going on everywhere.
Oh, it is. No, we're getting feedback from multiple states, so it's not just a Colorado issue. I think it's coming from the Midwest, the North, South. So again, I think I saw a stat this morning that of the 50 largest credit unions in the country, only 2 of them have not started closing significant number of branches. I think one of those happens to be on our network security service. But other than that, we're seeing I think the trend is true with a lot of the large ones. They're closing their branches to just drive-ups. And I would say a significant amount of time, those drive-ups are only serving their own members.
Yeah. Mike, what do you think about having a discussion with Doug about that?
Oh, completely. Yeah. I can contact you offline, Doug, and we can set up a time and go, get into a little bit deeper conversation about this and help some folks out there who are probably experiencing the same thing. More than happy to.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and some of the things I've been hearing, John, I had an interesting conversation with the Credit Union League of Connecticut's president and CEO, Bruce Adams, yesterday, and he said he's been doing interviews like almost 24/7 on this topic, and he had an interesting take that I haven't heard yet, is his employees getting to work. I mean, the ones that can still go to a branch or the headquarters and being pulled over by the police say, hey, are you part of an essential business out there? So are, you know, obviously healthcare workers, you know, police, fire, all that type of stuff, but having banking and credit union folks need to go there and having some sort of identification or some sort of certificate or something to identify them as, hey, you know, I have to go to work type of thing. So, and he said that they're handing out, you know, I don't even call them certificates, but some sort of documentation saying that they work for a credit union and they have to get to work in case they get pulled over by a police officer saying, hey, where are you going? So, well, I'm part of the essential workforce. I have to go here. So I thought that was a really interesting take on what's happening out there. And I haven't heard that one yet. I don't know if it's a widespread problem, but
It actually is. Denver
Is it?
just went to lockdown, and my wife works in a Department of Defense company, and they had to go and get from the DoD all of these certifications. The question is,
Yeah.
and this is a great question, like it should be something at least fairly, you know, I mean, anybody could print a document that says I work for a credit union, right?
Right.
So it seems like maybe we do need guidance, maybe for someone like Cousins or whoever, to sort of step in and make sure that with the local authorities that there's a recognized piece of documentation. That's a completely valid point, because we're going to see more and more of the larger areas start to do this as they see the cases ramp up and their healthcare people tell them to do that. And Denver was a good example, just happened last night.
That's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. The other one I heard is a lot of people talking about digital identity verification, digital ID verification. So, because obviously everyone's ramping up their digital offerings. Okay. How do you know who Bob is or who Jane is or that type of stuff? So digital identification is a pretty big deal right now. I've been talking to a few folks as well.
Yeah, actually, See Ledger, John Ainsworth and I just had a call, and he'll be joining us on Friday, and they'll be joining us as sponsors as well. So
cool.
No, it's a great point. Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no worries.
So I'm going to close it out with Tim just giving us some information. We are going to send out a survey. We hope that you'll take the time to fill it out. It's helping us to share kind of what people are doing and get some beat on how many credit unions are open or whatnot. And results are on the website, so we want you to be able to go see them. These town halls are also posted on the website, and we hope that you'll take the time to fill out the information. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Tim's going to take over and share with us. And then, as long as nobody else has any other information or wants to talk, we'll probably call it. But again, if you've got something, we're happy to hear from you.
Great. So this is I'm trying to share.
Oh, don't forget to introduce yourself, Tim.
Oh, okay. So my name is Tim Tibbles. I'm with Best Innovation Group. I'm a data scientist on their team, and we've been taking the data that you folks have been submitting and have put it into a presentation on the website. On the website, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it fine.
Okay, great. So just go to CU Digital Town Hall on big-fintech.com. Scroll down to the bottom. On the left, you'll see the recorded sessions, and then on the right, you'll see the actual survey results. And Mike, you were asking for this information last week, so this is as of Friday. So
awesome.
When we get any additional survey respondents, I'll update this presentation to be current. So if anybody wants to go to that, they can. I can just give a quick overview right now of our findings. Right now, the majority of credit unions from a governance perspective are using the multifunctional pandemic response team. We do have some folks where there's no team specified. They're just kind of handling it, as a team initiative across the organization, but nothing, not a specific team. But and then one credit union is using all hands on deck. We have most of the credit unions just are limiting to drive up only, and we've got a lot of people are offering one-on-one appointments along with that. Sometimes it's in combination with drive up and one-on-one appointments. As far as the branches, Typically, it's impacting almost all of their branches or all of them. So 76 to 100% of the branches are being impacted. If you look at the number of folks that are tracking direct deposit, right now we have 31% answered yes. Another 25% are considering it. The other 44% have not discussed it at this point. But something that we would strongly recommend if you need to be able to reach out to your members that might be struggling due to losing a job, or maybe they're getting their pay cut back, that might start impacting lending. If you look at the Skip-a-Pay, pretty much everybody's promoting Skip-a-Pay except for one credit union. So we've got about a third of those are only offering it if you ask for it, but the rest of them are promoting it to anybody, any and all. As far as protective gloves and masks or whatever it might be, we've got 40% as far as all staff. So this is all staff, not your front line. All staff is offering it. Have made it available to 46%, and another to only their high-risk employees, and then another 40% decided no. But if you look at their frontline staff, though, they are requiring it now for about 33% of the frontline, and then once again, it's just made available for the other folks. If you look at tracking infected members, right now we only have one credit union that is doing that actively. But if one credit union said if they do encounter them, then they'll start tracking. But for now, they have not encountered that. And the rest of them have decided either not or have not discussed it. Now, here's kind of the bulk of the list. So we put this in order of what everyone is doing. This is based on conversations on the phone, during the meetings that we've had. So everybody has sent out communications, of course, to their members on how they're handling it. And then the rest of it is pretty much, using the common sense stuff, like, encouraging use of ITMs and ATMs, using remote channeling, getting social distances within their staff areas, and cleaning, all their services, and waiving Skip-a-Pay fees. If you look down into the next area, then you're looking at a lot more of the PTO policies that people are implementing. They're relaxing PTO policies. They're encouraging people to work from home, doing some product changes as far as contactless payments, like Kevin was mentioning earlier, and waiving early CD withdrawal fees. I thought was a good idea in case people are needing access to those funds, immediately to be able to handle expenses because of lost jobs. Then when you start looking down at the, I'm not going to go through all these in detail. I'll let you guys do it. But, a lot of additional cleaning, some redoing products and services again. And as far as the impacts that we're seeing from this, the biggest one, of course, that everybody always talks about is what happens to all of our families when we run into a situation like this. And this is the number one concern right now. And what people are actually seeing is that people are taking part-time off to be able to care for kids that are staying home from school, and then additionally looking at sick time for themselves, as well as for taking care of sick relatives. And we even have 25% of our credit unions are due to sick time due to self-quarantining themselves because they believe that they may have it. So the last thing to take a look at here, as we talked about earlier, is that keep an eye out for having availability of laptops due to limited supplies, and evidently headsets now are definitely a problem. That all makes perfect sense. And a little bit less, we're not seeing a lot of credit unions right now that are being impacted by a fraud rate, a higher fraud rate. And we've only had one credit union mention that they've had employees that were actually affected. So that's our survey at this point. If you have not received a survey request, please send me an email at tim@big-cu.com. I put that at the beginning of our comments in the chat thread. So once again, tim@big-cu.com.
And notice there's no email that you have to give to get this information or anything like that. It's out there for free. I would like to say, Ryan, if there's a way we could put a link for people who want to take the survey somewhere around there.
Yeah,
That would be
and
great.
I can definitely get that on the page.
All right. So
Excellent.
hopefully this is something you can share maybe with your boards or as it grows. And, you know, our reach on this isn't huge. We're thankful for Cousins. We're thankful for Steve Broadcast. Mike, I don't know if you've been able to, you know, send out the requests for these, but I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to get more folks in.
Yeah.
And have even more discussion. But I want to thank everyone who took the time to come today. I know it's not a good time for these sorts of things. We hope you got something out of it. If you want to sign up or if you want a friend to sign up, please make sure you go to the website. You can have them do it there. Also, if you'd like to watch one of the past ones, they're there as well. Again, we're just thankful for everyone and their input. And we'll keep doing these as long as you find value in them. So everyone have a great day. This recording will be up soon. And thank you for your time.